in the land of opportunities, but it isn't perfect. There is always room for improvement, no matter the situation. Looking back on our past proves that improvement is always achievable. If enough people show compassion, it's inevitable that the results will be like dominoes. The first people to show compassion are the first dominoes to knock down all the other dominoes and spread it across the country. A few things I've been doing to spread compassion in my town is helping with Mental Health Mondays, so I can spread mental health awareness in my community. Actively participating in numerous events inside and outside of school, and the smallest but most impactful thing I've been doing is making an effort to always be kind. I've been trying to look at the world from a new lens and realize that others are going through things that I have no idea about, instead of only thinking about my small problems. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus came up with the radical idea that the Earth actually moved around the sun, instead of the preconceived notion that it was the other way around. This idea caused major outrage, and the people didn't want to accept that they weren't the center of the universe. Finally, after a century, this idea became widely accepted, and now it is common sense that the Earth and all the other planets rotate around the sun. I think that this is the same way. When we all realize that we aren't in the center, but we're spinning around in the vast universe like all the other planets, then we'll be more kind. With kindness, compassion will follow. America, where do we go from here? To conclude this essay, I want to urge everyone to find more compassion and spread it across the land that we can so fortunately call home. This is all of our homes, and we need to not only take care of the land we inhabit, but also look after the people that live here too. So America, where do we go from here? I think the only acceptable answer is up. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very good and spot on. Yeah. So, can I have a motion to open the pre-budget hearing?
I make a motion to open the pre-budget hearing.
Second. We have a motion by Dr. Painter and a second by Mr. Gubler to open the pre-budget hearing. Dr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Gubler?
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan? Please?
Yes.
Ms. Ford? Yes. There are no speakers. We have no comment for the pre-budget hearing. Can I have a motion to close the pre-budget hearing?
I make a motion to close the pre-budget hearing.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Painter and a second by Mr. Painter to close the pre-budget hearing. Mr. Gubler?
Yes. Mr.
Lansbury?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Dr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan? Speak?
Yes.
Ms. Ford? Yes. Citizen comment period? Do we have one?
We have one.
Ms. Lawson, I'm going to read this statement. Page County School Board welcomes citizen comment during regular meetings. School board members do not respond to public comment during a meeting. All comments should address a matter related to Page County Public Schools. The school board will not hear public comment that involves an individual student-related matter, the disclosure of which would violate applicable confidentiality requirements. The school board expects that each speaker will be courteous, modeling for our students how one can respectfully agree or disagree with others' views. Speakers will address their comments to the entire school board and not to one individual board member, nor to the superintendent, a staff member, or the audience. Speakers will have 3 minutes to present their comments from the podium.
Okay. And before I start, I'd like to ask, can I get an extra few minutes? I've never asked. I don't know how you do that.
How does the board feel about allowing an extra 3 minutes?
There's only one signed up, right?
Yes.
Me.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So what I came here tonight to speak on is not directed personally to the school board. Last school board meeting, we spoke about the tragedies and the mental health issues that are going on around us. I am a person that believes that our mental health issues and our sexual issues do not belong for our schools to figure out. I personally don't want the Department of Education to be my child's mental health professional, nor do I need them to talk to my child about sex. I just don't need that. Factual biology is okay, and I also don't need the school to be a babysitter. So in the last meeting, it was stated that we need to get back to focusing on our children and turn off the news. I could not agree more. However, we do make our children watch the news in the high schools. So, before we tackle a problem and put money and resources into it, we must know what the problem is. You have to identify the problem. So this doesn't necessarily mean here, but it's everywhere. We've made it okay for boys and girls to share restrooms. We've corrupted our kids' minds by putting nonsense in them, by telling them men can get pregnant. Men, it's just crazy. Men can have periods. This is all a lie. We have an emoji now that targets our children of a pregnant male. We have CPS getting called on us now if we don't let our children identify who they want to be, the choice, the gender they want to be. But what we're born is fact. We tell our children not to use certain pronouns anymore because it could be offensive. Our own government wants to call us terrorists if we're concerned about hot topic issues in the school system. We have some teachers who choose to push their political agendas on our children. We have, it used to be years ago, teachers were held at a higher standard. But now we have teachers who befriend students on social media, and the teachers can spew garbage like saying Christians or conservatives are Nazis. We see an uptick in teachers having inappropriate relationships with children. We tell our children that math is racist. Let's get rid of the advanced classes. This is absolutely ridiculous. We should be offering more programs for children who need more challenging work, not taking them away. We don't hold people accountable for their actions. We have children who can get by with bullying other children. They can threaten to bring guns to school, or they want to cause harm to others. And sometimes it's just taken with a grain of salt. No red flags here, but once it happens, we see the consequences. Then we say we missed the signs. We have put our children in face masks for 3 years and told them that they would catch a virus if they take it off and could kill someone. We haven't thought of the mental toll it's taken on our children, but we're going to find out in a few years. We use gay scenarios in our school to teach sex education. We proudly have the rainbow flag flying in our classrooms. We have teachers doing surveys that are inappropriate and asking children not to tell their parents. We have the zero policy here. Doesn't hold children accountable. They can get half the grade for doing nothing instead of having to try hard. We have politicians and activists calling for defunding the police and waging war on the police. We have educators teaching our children to be activists. You know, go burn it down, loot, steal, because you're owed this. That's what happens. We have some people running in another city nearby who thinks it's okay to have relationships with 14-year-olds. It's disgusting. They should be locked up. We have video games that our children play. You can pick up prostitutes, buy drugs, shoot the police. I don't want my children playing that. We have doctors who push pills and try to just numb the situation. Then we wonder why we have addicts. The doctors get kickbacks on these prescriptions. Now, I'm not saying that children don't need medication at all, but sometimes we have to let people figure out how to work out things without medicating. The list could go on and on. However, maybe a few more mental health professionals would help a few, and that's better than none. Maybe we could pump some more resource officers and they could stop a few more tragedies at our schools. Maybe we could start some mentor programs. But what we're lacking here is a change in the heart. That's where our hope comes from, is the change in the heart. And we cannot change people's hearts. Only the Lord and Savior can do that. The foundation must start at home. We must teach our children that you cannot put your hope in material things, movie stars, professional athletes. That's not where our hope comes from. We just had the Super Bowl. Imagine if people were as excited about going to church, filling the pews, praising God, as they were to watch the Super Bowl. So in closing, I just want to say this. We're all aware of the word. We know how it ends. But we don't have to sit on our hands and let these Looney Tune ideas corrupt our children's minds. We thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve the January minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for January 2022.
Second.
A motion by Mrs. Sullivan Smoot and a second by Dr. Painter to approve the January minutes.
Mr. Lansing. Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Dr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Gubler?
Yeah.
Mrs. Sullivan Smoot?
Yes.
Ms. Ford? Yes. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve, discussions and close this, no.
Just make a motion to approve.
Oh, okay, I'm
consent
sorry.
agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Sullivan Smoot and a second by Mr. Painter to approve consent agenda.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Dr. Painter,
No.
Mr. Goodwin,
contact tracing when there's any related information about a positive case. What we do want to stress with this is even though the contact tracing has changed, there's no change to the quarantine guidance. So we'll continue with that based on the guidance that we've been using since mid-January. So in order, again, to keep the numbers low and continue to trend downward, what do we need from staff, students, and parents? Again, if you're COVID positive, we need you to notify an administrator, the school nurse, or call the school, and then we need you to quarantine based on the guidance. If you're symptomatic, we ask you to please stay home. That is something that's really, truly helping us. Please don't send your child to school if they're sick. If you're a staff member, please don't come to school if you're sick. And then we just need everybody to follow the quarantine practice. Right now, the practice is 5 days at home if you're positive, and then you mask for 5 days. I bring up the masking requirement on buses because you'll see the federal mandate right now that requires students and staff to wear masks on any form of public transportation. It is set to expire on March 18th of this year. We do not know at this time whether that will be renewed or whether it will simply expire. So if it does expire at that time, then the mask mandate would be lifted on public transportation, so on our school buses and in our vehicles. So we'll keep you posted on that. Right now, we haven't heard anything about it being renewed at this time. In terms of, we had talked with you all about grading practices, and we said we would come back to you with an update. We just want to share some details about the survey that went out. So it was distributed to about 377 staff members in December of 2021, and that included teachers, instructional aides, and some other school staff. The purpose of that feedback survey was to gather information about the 50% grading practice, but also about other PCPS grading practices across the division. And I've just given you a couple of bullets there to give you a sense of some of the questions that were on this survey in terms of information that we were looking for. One question was specific to the practice of grading, and that's what I'm going to share with you, some data related to that particular question. The next slide just shows you some participation information. So of the 377 people that were eligible to respond, 114 did. So that gives us about a 30% response rate. A little on the lower side. We'd like to see that higher, but we did get some responses. In terms of those 114, 50% came from your high school teachers and staff, 29% from the middle school, and 21% from the elementary school. In terms of who responded, teachers responded at 82%, instructional aides were 6%, and then your other category were at 11%. I did put on that second line there, you'll see, in terms of teachers, how many across the division. We have about 253 teachers, 94 responded. So you have about a 37% rate there. So just want you to remember the data that you're seeing is not inclusive of every teacher in the division. It's only about 37% of our teachers. For the specific question, the grading practice of assigning a grade of no lower than 50%, should that be continued in PCPS? You can see overall, 11 of the 114, or 10% of the respondents, said yes, we should keep it. 75% said no, we should do away with it. And the undecided were about 15%. And then you can see there, the staff have broken it down for you so you can see it by high school, middle school, and elementary school in terms of how they responded. So again, about 89% of your high school staff that responded said no, it needs to go away. 73% of your middle school and 46% of your elementary school staff who responded said no, we need to do away with it. So where do we go from here? So it's the end of February. What the recommendation that we're making to you tonight is that we suspend the practice of requiring teachers to assign a grade no lower than 50%, beginning with the 2022-23 school year for all secondary courses. So that would be grades 6 through 12. And the reason why we're recommending it at the start of next school year and not now is because we're getting ready to start the third quarter on March 18th. And I think just to be fair to kids in terms of how we've moved them through this school year, you would be giving an advantage to some of our high school students who may have taken, say, a senior government class in the first semester versus one who's taking it now in the second semester. So just to be equitable, the recommendation is that we remove this practice beginning with next school year. I do think we need to engage with our elementary teachers and staff for a deeper discussion. We only had 24 respond to this survey. So I think before we make a decision of whether we eliminate it at the elementary level, I think we need to have some more discussions with those staff. Our division level grading practices committee will reconvene in late spring, and that includes staff and administrators from all of our schools and from the central office. They'll discuss this 50% practice as well as other division grading practices that were shared with us through the survey and just in other conversations that we've had across the division. And then their job will be to provide recommendations for us moving forward on how we can be more consistent with grading and how we can remedy some of the issues that teachers are bringing to us with respect to grading. So that concludes my update for you all this evening. Do you guys have any questions that I can answer for you?
When you go back to the elementary teachers and staff, that's going to be something when would that be done?
We do that now in the spring, yeah, because if we want to put something in effect for next year, we got to get that work done now. Or excuse me, if we want to put something in effect for next school year, we need to do that work now.
And the only reason you're delaying that is because you didn't get enough response to the survey.
Yeah, I think 24 elementary teachers, I think we just need to have some more. That was all who responded. And with that, while, 46% of them said no, 25% were undecided in terms of whether we should get rid of it or not. I think we just need to have some more conversations with them and get a better sense of how they're using it, why they're using it, and whether we continue it at that level.
Are there any other questions before we move on? Good?
Okay.
Okay. You were looking at me. I wasn't sure. All right, on to action items 10.01, masking requirements for staff. Dr. Fox?
Yes, so tonight I come to you with some additional information, and we said we would come back once we got information from the Department of Labor and Industry. So currently an employer is required to have staff who are, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated, wear a mask when you're in areas of high or substantial community transmission. And in areas of low or moderate transmission, the standard doesn't apply to fully vaccinated employees, only to unvaccinated employees. We've been in high since the beginning of the school year, so we've had all of our staff in masks, and also to be in compliance with when we required our students to be in masks. Last week, there was a special meeting that was held, and the Doley group did vote to revoke the standard that requires universal masking. That process now enters into a 30-day comment period, and then there'll be a hearing to confirm it. We don't anticipate anything formal with that in terms of saying it's been removed and revoked until the end of March, but the consensus is that they will be revoking the standard. In terms of masking guidance for staff from the two big groups that we've been using recommendations from all school year, the VDH is saying that you should continue to follow CDC guidance, and they do advise that we use the term personal acceptance of risk when we have mask optional situations. And we sort of talked about that a little bit when we made the decision to move to students having the option based on their parent choice. The CDC recommendations currently are unchanged. They still recommend universal masking indoors regardless of vaccination status for K-12 schools. So in terms of the decision for you all, this is an action item tonight. The options that you have moving forward with respect to whether or not we require staff to continue to wear masks or whether we potentially make it optional, I've provided you with 5 different options. So the first is that we can make masking optional for staff, all staff, when they're in school buildings and facilities. The second option is that you can make it optional for vaccinated staff while in school buildings and facilities. And you could require unvaccinated staff to continue to wear a mask. Your third option would be to wait for the final DOLE standard revisions that should come within perhaps about a month. And then based on that guidance, you could move forward. The fourth option would be similar to what we talked about when we proposed the parent choice option. You could direct our division staff to develop a database system to provide staff choice for masking once we reach certain thresholds for school or community transmission rates. And then, as always, if you have other suggestions that you'd like to consider. But again, this is an action item tonight, so I would like to now turn it over to you all for discussion and potential motion.
I make a motion that we make mask optional for all staff, all in school buildings and facilities.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Mrs. Painter, or Dr. Painter, and a second by Mrs. Sullivan Smoot to make masking optional for all staff while in school buildings. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I guess the effectiveness of our vote, when does that start? Is that immediately, or is that's the question from the motion, I guess, or?
Yeah, I think you guys you would need to tell us whether you want to start it tomorrow, Monday, next week, next month.
Effective immediately.
You're amending your
I'm
motion?
amending my motion to effective immediately.
The motion has been amended.
I'll second it.
And second.
A comment.
Mr. Gruber?
A comment for the, I would advocate for number 4, directing division staff to develop a database system, a data-driven system to provide staff choice for masking once we reach a certain threshold. In this case, moderate would be reasonable. Once we reach the moderate threshold for school or community transmission rates. I mean, it makes sense for me from a science, a science standpoint, following the science, following transmission rates. So, I mean, I could have jumped on this motion and said that real quickly, but it seems like the way school boards are set up, the person that makes the motion first gets that motion out there. So, I guess I would have liked to make the motion for number 4, but it sounds like we got to vote on this one first. So, it's an inherently biased system. I want to go on the record right there. Say it.
Well, I would just like to say one thing that I have thought about the masking when we let the parents make the decision about their children. And I'm speaking of myself. I know I'm older and sometimes maybe I don't hear things, but I will tell you, there have been times when I've been in meetings that if the person speaking doesn't speak loud enough, sometimes I have to ask for them to repeat it because I didn't understand it. And I think about children. Ever since we've been masked, the older students might ask it to be repeated. The younger children, probably not. And I do worry about this whole thing with COVID has been mind-boggling for everyone. But the learning process, I'm worried about, are they really hearing everything they need to hear, not because it's not being put out there, but because of the mask? I can't prove it one way or the other, but I have thought about that. Is that a possible barrier in some cases? Again, it comes back to parents. If your children are sick, keep them home. Our staff, if you're sick, stay home. I've had several teachers approach me and say, I'm fully vaccinated, booster, the other 2. That's no 100% guarantee. People are still getting sick. But I just think the overall communication, and the reason I'm voting for this tonight, I feel like, communication is going to be better just because the mask isn't on.
Well, and I think it's moving this direction anyway. If the Department of Labor and Industry voted, it's where it's headed.
It seems like it's heading that way, and I agree with you, Jackie, that I think we're going to have speech issues coming out of this thing. I really do, with our younger children learning that speech, and I think they've already changed some standards already with that, how quickly they learn and how many words they speak at a certain age, a certain time of the months of their life. So I think it's time to move forward. with taking these masks off for everybody. And the thing is, if you want to wear it, you can still wear it. And it's a personal choice.
Dr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Gubler,
No.
Mr. Lansbury,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Gordon.
Yes.
Thank you.
10.02, approval of claims for payment. Ms. Seacrest?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. You all have been provided with the claim certification where the total operating fund was $158,093.31. Food service expenditures, $18,257.64 for total expenditures of $176,350.95. Along with that, you have been given the list of claims and the check register, and if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
You have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the claims for payment as presented by Mrs. Seacrest.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Painter and a second by Mrs. Sullivan Smoot to approve the claims for payment as presented.
Dr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Gubler,
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon.
Yes. Ms. Seacrest, you are up again. Purchase orders over 10,000.
Yes, members of the board, we have 4 purchase orders this evening for your approval over $10,000. The first 2 are to Allied Health Service using our special education local purchase services. One is for some services that happened in January, and then the other one would be for our contracted for our deaf and hard of hearing students. The other 2 are to Amazon for mobile laptop stand desks, as well as a Wonder Workshop robot pack, and those would both be using ESSER food grant. Again, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Make a motion that we accept the purchase orders over $10,000 as presented.
Second.
A motion by Mrs. Sullivan Smoot and a second by Dr. Painter to approve the purchase orders over 10,000.
Mr. Gubler,
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Dr. Painter,
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Gordon.
Yes. Ms. Seacrest, resolution for sub-grant for special education.
Yes, I will read this into the record. Resolution to the Page County Board of Supervisors requesting adjustments of the 2021-2022 school budget for American Rescue Plan awards for special education. Whereas the American Rescue Plan ARP Act was authorized in March 2021, and whereas the Individual with Disabilities Act, IDEA, Flow Through, and American Rescue Plan Act ARP funds are relief funds intended to address the impact that COVID-19 has had and continues to have on elementary and secondary schools in Virginia. And whereas Page County Public Schools has been notified of ARP sub-grant awards for special education fund allocations in the amount of $191,407, of which $13,042 is available for special education preschool programs. $178,365 is available for special education IDEA and is available for the use on a reimbursement basis. And whereas these additional federal ARP special education funds will be used to support programs and activities consistent with addressing special education Part B, Section 611. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Page County School Board, in order to respond to the impact of COVID-19 on school operations, students, and staff, respectfully request the Page County Board of Supervisors to appropriate the additional federal funding of $191,407 with no increase or decrease in the local appropriation involved to the 2021-2022 school operating budget as follows. You can see the table there provided for you all with the budget amendment. This is to certify that the foregoing resolution was authorized by the Page County School Board in its regular session on Thursday, February 24th, 2022. If you have any questions on that, I'll do my best to answer that as well.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution for the ARP sub-grant for special education.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Painter and a second by Mr. Painter to approve the resolution for the ARP sub-grant for special education.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gubler.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan Snoot.
Yes.
Ms. Ford.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Benson, the 2022-23 academic calendar.
Good evening, members of the board. Tonight we have before you what we call our one-page summaries, and we've distributed those to you. We've begun to put these together. This is the calendar that we generally post to the website, and these calendars do include what we have previously discussed at school board meetings. Just as a reminder to you, we have 176 days in our calendar. We have 6 professional development days, including the 2 flex days that are done over the summer. We actually have 5.5 teacher work days. When we went back since our last meeting and looked at our back to school calendar a little bit, that Friday of that first week when we plan to do convocation, we get an extra day in there. So there's actually 5.5 teacher work days. This calendar does incorporate the change in winter break that we discussed last meeting and the movement of the spring break holiday as well. So in your packet and your pages there that we handed out, I thought it was important for you to at least see the instructional time that the school division does have in the calendar. And if you're looking at that document, you see that that last number on the document is the number of days that you have to kind of play with, or the amount of time that you have to play with if we have inclement weather. So I think we feel good about that as well. Be happy to answer any questions.
Make a motion, we approve the 22-23 academic calendars as presented by Mr. Benson.
Go ahead. I'll second.
We have a motion by Dr. Painter and a second by Mrs. Sullivan Smoot to approve the 2022-2023 academic calendar as presented.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Gubler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Snoot.
Yes.
Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Benson, you are up again. Overnight field trips.
We actually have 2 overnight field trips for you this evening, one of which is a request from Luray High School for the same FCCLA state conference that we discussed with Page Middle going and Page County High School last time. Luray High School has just 4 students going on this trip, and we have spoken to all students and families, and they were comfortable staying, all 4 students in one room. Obviously, they're going to be following the same masking that we discussed when this trip was previously presented, and we would ask for your approval regarding that trip this evening. The second trip is from Luray High School, and this is for the forensics team. This is for them moving on for their competition. The forensics team is asking to go to Randolph Henry High School for this. It is an overnight trip. The guidelines there are as follows. There'll be a temperature check when students check in that first day. Students are asked to mask when they are not competing or eating at this trip, and we did the same thing. We've checked with students and families regarding the overnight accommodations. There are 12 students on this trip, and all families and students were comfortable staying for 2 of them.
And where is that located? You said the school, but
Charlotte Courthouse?
is that like Richmond? Or?
You know, I do not know that.
Okay, no, that's no problem.
I have an address here at, of 755 David Bruce Avenue, Charlotte Courthouse, Virginia.
Charlotte County Public
That's what it is.
I make a motion that we approve the overnight field trip request as presented by Mr. Benson.
I'll second that, and I have a comment as well.
A motion by Dr. Painter and a second by Mr. Painter. And we have discussion.
Yeah, so, it would be nice, and I know, some people aren't familiar or feel good about, comfortable speaking in front of folks, but if we send folks like this on a field trip, for them to come back and kind of give an opportunity to share it with us in one of the meetings.
Sure.
And that'll, give them a lot of good experience and confidence, I believe, as well.
Sure, we can do that.
Dr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Goodler,
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Gordon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. Board member discussion time?
Well, I think we need to note that we've got both of our ladies' basketball teams in high school are playing tonight, so we hope they're doing well. I checked the Facebook to see if I got any updates from Paige. I didn't. And I'm getting ready to buy some popcorn and go watch a little bit of a game here. So I'm looking forward to that.
I have a comment. So I wanted to follow up on what I was talking about. So our current voting system that we use in Virginia School Board, I believe is flawed. And we've seen this time and time again. So for an important vote, for an example, not tonight's vote necessarily, just this has happened many times. For an important vote, school board members should be able to discuss the merits of all the options before anyone gets to serve a motion. But only at that time, after the discussion has taken place, should a school board member be allowed to make a motion. Then we've heard all the merits of those options. Otherwise, it gives an unfair advantage to the school board member that first yells out that motion and potentially moves that agenda. So if VSBA is listening tonight, maybe they can consider this. I'm sure there's merits to both sides, but it just doesn't make sense from a common sense standpoint.
So our rules of order, what is our rules
It's
of order?
supposed to be a
It's
motion.
Robert's-
then
Robert's
It's
discussion.
Robert's
Yeah.
Rules of Order, so, I mean.
And that isn't,
we have to.
once you motion it second, then you got to discuss it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, you have to have a motion, you have to have a second, and then you can have discussion.
It
Well,
doesn't, it
But I
doesn't
think
make
is
it
it-
right. It doesn't make it based on common sense. To me,
Well,
it
I'm
just
not going to
doesn't
go
make
down the common sense rabbit hole right now. But I will say that, with tonight's vote and last week in my own workplace, I saw this happen, that people didn't know whether they should wear their mask or not because they felt that, if their supervisor felt strongly about it, that they might be retaliated against. And I just want everybody to know that they make their own choice. School boards hire and school boards fire. Your principal and your supervisors don't do that. So we voted for it. You get to make your own choice. So don't feel bad about if you really don't wear a mask and your principal wants you to, or whoever, that you make that own choice for yourself.
And that's fine. I think my issue was the flawed voting system of Robert's Rules of Order. That's my main issue. I think we should be able to speak about these things and discuss the merits, and then someone can put forth a motion. That's my main emphasis.
I just would like to say that Mrs. Sullivan Smoot and I went with Dr. Fox on Tuesday night to the Phi Delta Kappa Superintendent's Panel, where Dr. Fox spoke with the Shenandoah County, Augusta County, and City of Harrisonburg superintendents, and they just talked about the school systems and the challenges they faced, and it was a very good discussion. It was nice to go and support her, and it was interesting to listen to the superintendents from the surrounding areas. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Sullivan Smoot and a second by Dr. Painter to adjourn.
Mr. Goodler,
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Dr. Painter,
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Gordon.
Yes. We're adjourned.